One of the major themes in the novel The Prince and Pauper by Mark Twain is the unjust nature of law practiced during the period of 16th century in England. Though seemingly fictitious, Twain actually have brought forward the actual laws that were practiced during that period of time. By doing so, he does a heavenly task of a writer, that is, purifying the society by pointing out its flaws. One of Mark Twain's ideas is that the people of high standing ought to endure the harsh laws they create. If they were to experience these harsh laws, they would soften them. Of course, in this novel, a prince and pauper exchange clothes and places, and the prince experiences life as a pauper. In doing so, he experiences his father's harsh laws, and when his rightful place as king is given to him, he softened those laws. Mark Twain himself summarized his purpose in writing this novel in his words as below. At the very beginning of the story, we are shown the unjust execution of an escort who was only 25 years old. She was unjustly executed on 16th of July 1546. She was a Protestant and she rejected the doctrine of transubstantiation. In the society of this time, denying the doctrine of transubstantiation made her a heretic. What is the meaning of transubstantiation? Here is a task for you. Refer to the dictionary and find the meaning of transubstantiation. Because of denying this transubstantiation, she was burnt at the stake. What is stake? Stake is a wooden pole to which the victim is tied and fagots are placed around him and set fire. Pretty vicious, isn't that so? Right. She was burnt at the stake with her 3 other people accused and convicted of heresy. It is mentioned in few places of the novel about the trial of Norfolk and Surrey. Norfolk and Surrey are people both of whom King Henry VIII wishes were dead. At the time this novel is set, one is in fact dead, Surrey. In December 1546, the Duke of Norfolk and his son, the Earl of Surrey, was thrown into the Tower of London. An event that the pauper Tom Canty witnessed. Both were accused of high treason, but neither was guilty. On 19th of January 1547, the Duke of Surrey was beheaded. The Duke of Norfolk was supposed to be executed the day that the king died, but his execution was stayed and eventually he was released from the Tower of London. You may find that is done by Tom Canty as the king in disguise. The Earl of Surrey is the Duke of Norfolk's son. In the first part of the novel, we find that the Prince Edward wants Tom Canty to be drawn, hanged and quartered, thinking that he deceived him in order to take the rulership. So, though seemingly these words are simple, those are some brutal punishment given to a prisoner which are not accepted in decent social norms. So we don't find this kind of punishment in the world today. The first one is drawn. That means the prisoner is drawn to the place of execution on a cart drawn by horse. That means he is tied, his hands are tied and he is drawn on the ground up to the place where the execution is done. And the second thing is done is hanging. Hang. The prisoner is hung, but is taken down from the gibbet while he is still alive. He is disemboweled. That means he is cut open and his internal organs are removed. And his entrails are set on fire and burned while he is still alive. Brutal, right? Horrified, don't you think so? Okay, the final thing is quartered. After the prisoner was beheaded, the prisoner's body is cut up or torn into 4 pieces. Sometimes the executioner would use a sword to start cuts. Then the prisoner would be tied to animals such as horses. The horses would be driven away from the prisoner, tearing the prisoner's body into 4 pieces. The story of Whipping Boy is not about law, but it is an unjust presentation against humanity in today's terms. Whipping Boy means the use of a boy to take the royal personage's punishment on behalf of him. James I and Charles II had whipping boys when they were little fellows to take their punishment for them when they fell short in their lessons. The punishment boiling to death and being hung because of witchcraft is found in the first trial by Tom as the new king. In the novel, the man accused of murdering another person with poison asks for a boon from the new king. That is, to be hung instead of boiling, instead of being boiled slowly to death. In history, some people have actually been punished by being boiled alive, slowly lowered into the boiling oil or water. The other thing, and the same place we find in the novel, as in history, a woman and her 9-year-old daughter were sentenced to be hung because they were convicted of selling their souls to the devil and raising a storm by pulling off their stockings. These kind of real incidents are brought by Twain in order to show the injustice that could be associated with these kind of unjust laws. The story of execution of Blackbeard's mother is another example of the unjust nature of law that was practiced in that period of time. The thieves and beggars respected Blackbeard's mother, who was burned as a witch. Her crime was palm reading and foretelling the fortune. She was accused as a witch and burned alive at the stake. The stories reveal that she died cursing the people who burned her and the crowd who were watching her burn. And further, England's laws against begging and the punishment for begging are portrayed in the story. Like, if you are caught for begging for the first time, you are whipped. And if you are caught begging for the second time, your ear is cut. Begging for the third time, you are branded on the cheek and sold into slavery. You heard correctly, slavery. If you are a runaway slave and you are caught, you are hanged. Simple it is. Yokel's story is pathetic and it is powerful representation of unjust law in that period of time in England. He undergoes all the punishment given to people who are found to be beggars. Indeed, both of his ears were cut. What is more, Yokel had to watch his wife die after being whipped in public, and he had to watch his children starve to death. And he was branded and sold as a slave. Now he is a runaway slave. He continues his story his own word. I have run from my master, and when I am found, the heavy curse of heaven falls on the law of the land that had commanded it. I shall hang. So, if you are writing on this theme, this is an important juncture in this story. Yokel's story summarizes all the injustice happened to people in the lower caste in that society. So I strongly recommend you to read this part and keep the important quotations highlighted. Prince Edward, when he was imprisoned, he experiences the condition of prison life at this time in England. The condition of prison life are poor. The food is bad. If not for the loyal servant Blake Andrews, the king would go hungry. The jailer can be bribed. In fact, each night he is bribed to bring in alcohol for those who pay the bribe. Each night the prisoners get drunk and fight. The sexes are not segregated. One night a man beats a woman and then the jailer beats the man, like that. That night the two beaten people fill the air with groans. The prisoners are chained. Prison life is monotonous. So this kind of ill-healthy environment is associated with the prison life. Prince experiences these things in first hand. The prince experienced the death of two female baptists who showed care and affection to him in the prison. These women are burned at the stake because of their beliefs. Mark Twain makes their death more horrible by having the two young daughters of one of the women try to die with her. So when Prince Edward came to power, he lived this kind of unjust law because he has experienced the injustice in his own eyes. When the prince was in the prison, he experienced few more unjust practices of law. Okay, let's read them. The old lawyer with honorable scars is another injustice associated with exercise of free speech. So this old lawyer is punished way too severely for his supposed offense. In the story, we read like this: among these prisoners was an old lawyer, a man with a strong face and dauntless mien. 3 years past, he had written a pamphlet against the Lord Chancellor, accusing him of injustice, and he had been punished for it by loss of his ears in the pillory and degradation from the bar, and in addition he had been fined £3,000 and sentenced to imprison for life. Lately he had repeated his offence, and in consequence was now under the sentence to lose what remained of his ears, pay a fine of £5,000 and be branded on both his cheeks and remain in prison for life. So he says, these be honorable scars, and he turned back his grey hair and showed the mutilated stubs of what had once been his ears. At the back of the novel, in Mark Twain's note, you can read the further note about this. Well, I have not added any comments to the unjust practices of law in the post. Had it been, the video would have been too much lengthy. I would like you to add comments about the punishment given and the practice of law in 16th century England. Of course, these laws have been lifted and modified and changed with the course of time, and we hardly hear this kind of law system in England now. So I think the mission of Mark Twain is successful. Finally, kind thanks goes to David Bruce of his discussion guide, from which I took these points. You can visit to his website to show courtesy to his work. So that's it. Hope you have got an idea about the unjust practice of law in 16th century England. So good luck with your exams. If you haven't subscribed our channel, you can hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon not to miss our latest video post. So goodbye until next video.